Well, hello and welcome to this special conversation with the Railway Children, which is currently live at King's Cross Station. I'm joined by three people who have gone into making it such a brilliant production. So I hope you will be listening and asking questions as well as we go along. We've got about half an hour together, and it is a huge pleasure to welcome the director, Damian,
hello,
the writer, Mike, and also Caroline Harker, who plays the mother as well. Welcome, everyone. If you can't already see, lurking behind me, and I'm hoping not to topple into the siding as we speak, is the magnificent steam engine. More of that in a minute. What you might not know is I'm sitting surrounded by 1,000 seats in what is essentially a purpose-built theatre. So, Damian, I wonder if you could get us started. This is sort of the latest stop on the Railway Children's journey as a play. Tell us a bit about where it's come from.
Well, we started at the National Rail Museum in York, and that was in 2008, so quite a long time ago now. I've grown older, more grey hairs with the journey. And we played 2 years in York in an existing space which we transformed into a theatre. Yeah. Then we took it to Waterloo Station, to the old Eurostar site, and we played there for 2 years. And we took it to Toronto, and we played in the city there in a purpose-built theatre in Toronto. And we took, actually, this very train went to Toronto and came back.
Well, it is actually...
So this locomotive, I should say, not train.
Yeah,
locomotive.
Well,
it is terminology.
It is magnificent. Just tell us a little bit about it. What should we know?
Well, it's part of the National Collection. It comes from the National Rail Museum in Shildon. It's a train from the mid to late 1800s, mm-hmm. And it's a very beautiful piece of equipment, but it's no longer able to steam, so it doesn't go under steam anymore, as indeed most of the collection at the National Rail Museum doesn't. Yeah. There are a few working examples, but this isn't one of them. Yeah.
And so this theatre itself has been constructed as well. So we'll come on to that in a little bit. Now, Mike, the Railway Children will be known to many people because now it's an award-winning play, but also before that, a book and a film. What was your first encounter with it?
I think it must have been the book, because I was a big E. Nesbitt fan when I was a kid. Yeah. But I think, in a way, the film in the late 60s sort of got in the way of my memory of the book, really.
Yeah. I think you might be saying you didn't enjoy it.
Well, I was the wrong age for it.
Okay.
Sort of.
Because the book's what, 1905, 1906?
Yeah, the book's 1905. I was the right age for the book when I read it, but when the film came along, I think I was 17. I was living in a small town. And I thought that it was looking back at an era of steam, and I just wanted to get out of the small town I was in. So I kind of so when I came to the book again, it was a total revelation to me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And how do you even begin to adapt it? What do you go through? What happens?
You do a lot of copying out. Sorry, I shouldn't say that because it sounds easier than it is. You read it an awful lot, and you try and find in some way a way of reflecting the author's voice as well as turning it into a play. But very much, I went to Damian first and said, I don't know if this is possible because it's so episodic.
Yes.
And they won't talk about what the problem is.
And when you say that, you mean that we jump from the present day to the past and back again and so
on?
Well,
we do in our version.
Yes.
In the actual book, of course, it stays in its own time. So our what we did in order to give it a dramatic arc was to tell it from the three children's adult years. Yes. So they're looking back on their childhood.
Yeah. And how did you come to that decision? Because, of course, Damian, in the film, the children are played by children. In this production, there are children in the cast, but the children are essentially played by adults, aren't they?
Yeah, I think there was a practical element in that, which was about because it's a story in which three children are the drivers of the play, of the narrative. It meant that if we'd gone for children of the correct age to play the parts, there would be a huge amount of weight on their shoulders to carry the whole play forward. technically we would have had to found 9 children to play those 3 roles.
Because they would have to rotate.
Because we'd have to rotate and all the rest of it. That's very complicated. Even more complicated in York, where there isn't a large community of children who are at profession, are learning to be actors, as it were, at the schools, stage schools. We don't have stage schools now. So there was some practical elements of it. But I think the thing that really tipped it was that when Mike brought that forward as a possibility of telling it retrospectively, it opened up a way of telling the story that was much more fluid than had we tried to tell it in a linear fashion. In other words, the framework of memory is a really good way of allowing us to move quickly from one place to another. And it also gives our 3 children a direct relationship with the audience, which allows them to keep us up to date with where we are in the narrative. So, but there were practical issues to it, but the key was, in actual fact, this was the best way to tell this story theatrically.
And I have to say, at this point, I have to confess, I've seen the show twice, and I absolutely loved it. And Caroline, you've been in it twice at Waterloo as well. So, I mean, for me, I have to also confess on a personal note, the first time I saw it, I wasn't a dad, and now I am. And so there must have been a bit of dry ice stuck in my eye for most of the second half, the second time I saw it. It's incredibly moving. What's it like to be in it? And also, how did you even begin to prepare for it?
Well, to be in it is wonderful, is exciting, because at the beginning of the evening when you talk to the audience, because we come amongst the audience.
You're sort of milling around.
You just know that they're in for something unusual. So that you just, you're about to jump. It's a ride, really, that you're going to go on all together, and it's exciting, and they're going to love it, is what you feel. So it's wonderful to be in. Every night it feels different. It's a huge audience. So, you've got either side of the stage, so if something goes a bit wrong one way, you could sort of recreate yourself the other side. I think that's an odd thing to say, but do you know what I mean? It always feels fresh. There's always someone else who can do it too. What was the other question?
Well, how did you prepare? Had you read the book? Would you have to read?
I didn't read the book until rehearsal started, and the preparation is sitting there because Damian is pretty amazing, and you just went through it all. The rehearsal process was really thorough. You mine it for absolutely everything. And it just evolved altogether as a group.
So I have quite a practical question though, which I still haven't got my head around, even though I've seen it twice. But 500 people on one side, 500 people in the other, a hulking great locomotive in the middle. So when the magic is happening on one platform, how can the others see what's going on? I still can't quite get my head around what's happening.
They don't miss a thing, do they?
How does it all happen?
Well, the train. I think again, Mike made the decision in the writing of it that the train would make its appearance at the end of the first half. Which, as a seasoned dramatist, he knew that you don't shoot all your guns in the first 5 minutes.
And I have to say there, Damien, when the train comes on, it gets a huge round of applause, doesn't it?
People love to see it. I mean, it's a very moving moment.
It is.
Seeing it, being in the presence of it coming in. So. And the way in which the stage works means that, in actual fact, all the action is visible all the time. I know that seems a bit odd, but it is. And this side of a train is exactly the same as the other side of a train. So in terms of pictorially what you see the same thing both sides. So you're not giving one story one side and the other story the other side.
And it's a huge wide theatre, so actually not that many rows.
And I think the other great thing about being in Traverse is that whilst it's a big space and you've got 1,000 people, everybody is no further than 10 rows. The furthest you can be away is 10 rows.
Which is great.
Which is actually makes it very intimate.
So one of my questions there was actually, and then I've got some questions coming through here, but where does your role, obviously it begins, when you first put pen to paper, but where does it end? And then do you have to say, Damien, it's over to you, and do you keep involved? How does it work?
Oh, that's a very good question. It ends quite early on, really. When I finish the script, but because Damien and I work together all along the way. It's not. I think people do imagine that if you're writing, you're in some kind of garret on your own totally, and you do it and then present your baby over to somebody else who then goes and spoils everything. But it doesn't really work. And
it's much more iterative.
I know, because actually the initial idea for this was Damien's. He proposed it when at the theatre, because we have this amazing National Museum in York, where we both live, where the theatre, where it started is. And so then he came to me. So it was, we passed the ball, but
sort of throughout. And so what happens when you see it on stage and you say, you know what, that is going to require rewriting? I mean, who said that? Was there any bit of it that you actually had to go back over? And
you know, I'd be honest, I think we're so close to the draft that we read in the first instance, it's not true. It's, you know, there's a few things. We brought it to Waterloo the first time. We cut a bit of the top of the first act, which was actually a suggestion of one of the producers for Waterloo, and that made sense. Some of the other shifts that have been made in it have been made by the actors playing the roles. So there are little bits that have come out through how they do things, through certain things, ad-libs that they've placed into it. Little clarifications of text, of what it means, so slight little alterations in it. But really, and
when that happens, will you actually literally adjust the script for, or do you just let it ride?
There's a huge amount of debate as to which script is which. There's so many of them floating about.
Caroline, I'm sure you've never been known to ad-lib. I'm sure that would never happen.
No, I don't think I have in this. Have I, Damian?
No, you haven't. But you have made some suggestions.
Have I?
Everybody has. I don't think anybody has.
Sometimes it makes sense to rearrange things because of timings. I mean, you've got a very long platform. You have to get in by a certain time.
Yeah, but not by too much. You don't switch huge chunks. That would be
no,
not
at all.
Just so
no names have been changed.
Exactly, good. Or people harm. I'll come back to the harming in a minute because I want to know about working with the younger members of the cast as well. But we've got some questions here. One's for you, Damian. Chloe Hampson Ward asks, you've directed the production a few times. Were there any new challenges or surprises this time? We're having a big lump of earth for a theatre on day one was one challenge.
Here was a challenge because you know, I was constantly amazed by how things were achieved in such a short space of time by a team of dedicated human beings working in extremely cold conditions.
So just paint us a picture.
Well, I came here 5 weeks before we opened. I looked into this space here and it was a big hole in the ground. And then 5 weeks later, it's a theatre. I still don't quite know how they did it, but I know that it was almost 24 hours a day, people working, and you know, London's a difficult place to get stuff into and get stuff out of. You know, the train came in the middle of the night. Does the train come?
A silly question. Does the train come on a railway?
No, it came on the back of a truck.
On the back of a lorry.
And the track wasn't here. You know, the track that's in there wasn't here.
So you assume that's the only thing that was here?
No, it wasn't.
Even that wasn't.
And what's underneath the track was a hole that was about 3-4 meters deeper than it actually is at the moment. So it is. You know, when I say it's phenomenal, I mean it was phenomenal what happened here over that period of time. So I think it was different from a point of view of the lead up to it was quite an exceptional lead up to any. I mean, you built a theatre. That's what we did, which is quite an incredible.
And did you notice, Mike, a difference here? Did you think there were certain things that had to be taken into account?
There have been shifts in the way characters are interpreted, but actually I like that. People often ask me, was it how you imagined it?
Yeah.
And oddly, I don't think I do imagine it in that sort of way. I think I almost see it like architecture or music, and you can kind of play it in very different ways and get through it in very different ways. So there were surprises, but they were delightful surprises. You know, there was no kind of, oh my God, I must talk to my agent moment.
No, good. This is a good relief. That's why you're all still
we're all still talking.
Together. This is good. Now let me ask. I mean, I've jumped over a little bit, haven't I? Because of course, Caroline, for viewers who haven't seen the show, just give us a quick reminder. I'm doing this in slight reverse order of Mother, but also of what it's about, because I want to ask everyone else what it's really about. But in plot terms, just quickly remind us.
Well, they're living a very happy middle class, quite well off life in London, and suddenly father is arrested and taken away, and they have to. What's the time gap there before they leave to go to Yorkshire? It's longer than I think always. It's sort of 5 months or something, isn't it?
A few months.
Yes, but basically, so we do it very economically and succinctly, but then they move away,
So
they have to go to Yorkshire.
A happy family.
Yes, a happy family.
Taken away.
Father is taken away, money becomes a serious issue, and they have to go away. I feel they sort of go away to a sort of safe house. That's how I see it, because they don't know what's going on. And while they're away, of course, they're like aliens that have landed. They do, I always imagine that mother almost can't really understand the Yorkshire accent. I mean, they're charming people that it's so foreign and peculiar. But their characters are really discovered because the children are unfettered by schooling, and they have no backstory there, and they of course find out who they are and what they're made of, and they get into scrapes and adventures and save people, and and then by the end, when father comes back, they're very different people, and
and they have
so imagine their life if that hadn't happened. I mean,
exactly. So that's a bit of an insight into the plot. But Damian, for you, what is the Railway Children really about?
You're always asked this question, Wayne. It's constantly in flux. I think the meaning of the play is always something that it comes and goes depending on when you last saw it. You have a different point of connection with it. But I think, in essence, a big part of the story is about what we can learn from each other, and how adults can learn from children. I think there's a huge part about that there is a natural quality to a child's reaction to something that is very open, very honest, uncluttered by history and the baggage that we all have, that cuts straight to the chase, and that the children throughout the play help the adults to understand who they are and how they ought to be. Really.
And they play such a role. They're not. You've said
they're
before,
not side
it's not them being saved; it's them doing the same.
So they do it. So that's it.
We might just have a couple of other questions coming here. Someone's now going back to York. Here we are. This is Abigail. We're looking forward to the show returning to York's National Railway Museum this summer. Tell us about the NRM residency. There you go, Damien, your best place.
Well, we're going to be, the York Theatre Royal will be at the National Railway Museum for the whole of this year. Our building is being completely renovated, so we're building a theatre at the National Railway Museum, and we will be putting the Railway Children on there this year, which will be this production in a 1,000-seat space, purpose-built at the National Railway Museum this time, throughout the month of August. And we're also doing a community play called In Fog and Falling Snow there, which is, again, working with the National Railway Museum and the people of York.
So that's this August for the
Railway Children in August,
So they'll be running in parallel?
Yes, they will be.
Yeah, because hopefully here in King's Cross, at least through
absolutely. Which is great. I mean, I think the notion was, it's really important, I think, for a regional theatre to have a show like this playing in London. I think is a great achievement for us, and it says a lot about regional theatre.
Yeah, it's a formidable story. So I'm going to ask you each the single most challenging thing about each of your roles in this whole process. Caroline, and it does amaze me, Caroline, how you keep it so fresh every night. You need to buy a bit of time for that.
How fresh?
But yeah, but you have to, for everyone, every night it's a totally fresh production, and yet for you it's the 100th time you've done it. So
it just feels different every single time because the audience is always different, and you just listen. You have to listen and respond and not get into just sort of wanting to say your bit. It's all about passing a baton and receiving a baton, if you want to talk about it in acting terms, and that keeps it fresh.
And so in a sense, the laughs are not in the same place every night. Do you sense the how different is the reaction?
Yes, I think you sense. I think it's different every single time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the laughs aren't in the same place, but you can sense. I have to do. There's quite a hefty bit in the middle with the Russian, where I have to talk about Russia and with Shapansky, and I can sense sometimes that small children might be restless or something, and so you are playing it. I know it seems odd. You're not thinking, well, I'll get through it quickly, but you're just sort of pitching it above or below, or you're finding your way through, and that keeps it alive.
Yeah, well, I've got a question on this here then. This is from Jane, and she asks, Caroline, what's your favourite part of being in the Railway Children?
My favourite part? It's very difficult. I like all of it. My favourite part. I like the family that's created backstage as well as on stage. I think that's really important, that it's a company.
Yes.
It's a happy company. You're doing something that you know people are going to enjoy.
Yeah.
You're not torturing people for 3 hours.
Yes.
You're thinking, this is all right. My favourite part in the play, well, probably the bit with Shapansky.
Yes.
The bit that's a bit more, it's a turning point for Mother as well, because things get very bleak for Mother. She's not getting any response for trying to help Father's plight, nothing.
Yeah.
And then into her life comes this.
Well, it's another way for us to think about outsiders as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's goodness.
It's like a sort of Russian doll.
Yes.
Sort of yet another take on that.
Yes.
Damien, for you, most challenging bit of all.
Well, I think a really challenging part of it is the whole thing about putting different companies together again and bringing that sense of family back to it. And it's every time I've done it since, I've worked, since we did it first time in York, I've worked, Sue Scott Davison's done casting with me on it. And I think the process of going through the casting is always really critical, putting a good group of people together who look after the show, because at the end of the day, that is the job of the actors and the company and everybody that works on it, is to keep it for every audience as good as it possibly can be.
I mean, obviously
they
have to look right and work well on set.
Yeah.
How important is it that they get on well off stage?
I think it's important that they have a good relationship, that they are able to be. I mean, you know, it's a purpose-built theatre, but at the end of the day, this is a site-specific production. Yeah. So it doesn't have all the luxuries of, you know, being in a West End theatre. So there are certain hardships.
I think you mean people are sort of living
it's
in
a little
close
bit
quarters.
Closer, and you know, it's the temperature, the variable backstage a little bit for them from time to time, and you know, it's just not the same as being in a theatre. You know, having a team of people who really know why it's important that you go through all of that and that you get out the other side of it. They have to be very conscious of each other's safety. There's, you know, almost 80, 90 tons worth of train comes in and out of space.
Yes.
So there's a lot of health and safety things about it, and having people who know how to do that's really important.
Yeah, obviously it does matter. So Mike, most challenging bit for you in this whole process?
I think the most challenging bit for me came quite early on, actually, because because the nature of the Railway Children, the plot of the Railway Children is this awful thing happens to this family. The father gets arrested, but actually the children aren't really aware of that, and plus their mother says, and we're not going to talk about it ever.
Yes.
So you've got to play about something which nobody is allowed to talk about.
Yes.
So I went on a lot of long walks puzzling that one out. But of course, in fact, often it's the case that your problem becomes your solution. It became a play about a family who didn't talk about this elephant in the room.
Yes.
And the elephant, of course, we're sort of sitting in front of the thing which becomes the instrument through which they get their father back.
Yes, it does, and that's the train itself.
Yeah, the train itself. That's the way they actually contact the outside world, and the train it is that brings them back.
Why its entrance is so poignant.
Absolutely, it isn't just a train. When it comes in, it bears the solution. Really. It bears their happy ending.
Now, I'm sorry to say we are running out of time in this conversation. I am going to ask you though, Caroline, if you had to, particularly for people who haven't yet seen it, and I hope will come and check it out here at King's Cross, if you had to sum up this production, maybe in just a couple of words. What you've been in many things on television and on stage, but each one is different.
Well, it's thrilling and complete and unique. That's my 2 words.
Okay, 2 words. 2 words from you, Mike. Kenny?
Oh dear me, 2 words. You're asking a writer to just choose 2. I would say it. I don't know. The word that comes into my head is family. I think it works across the generations, and I love the fact that whole families sit together, and sorry, this is more than 2, and have not exactly the same experience, but a very strong experience together.
Yes, no, it is intense.
So that's just one. Family.
Yes, family. Okay, and you, Damian?
It's moving and life affirming.
Life affirming. Very good. Okay. Well, that is our conversation, sadly, coming to an end for now. I'm going to say a huge thank you to Damian Cruden, to Mike Kenny, and of course to Caroline Harker for joining me. Please.
Can I just say to Kate, yes, you would enjoy it with your boyfriend. It's not just for kids. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely right.
Definitely.
And I can highly recommend it. I saw it with kids and now, or rather without and now with, and I hugely enjoyed it both times, and I would love to come again soon if you'll have me. So thank you for joining us on this hangout. Do come and see the show, but particularly to Damian, to Mike, and to Caroline. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought that was a question.